and welcome to PraDa Law Live. I'm Jackie Mendez, your host for today's show. We have an awesome show lined up for you, an excellent panel. We have our special guest who I'd like to introduce to you first, Mike Haber.
Good evening. How are you?
He'll be talking to us about criminal law. And of course, one of our partners here at PraDa Law, Daniel Silver.
Happy to be here tonight. Thank you for joining us.
And he'll be talking to us about family law today. And of course, our other partner, Jennifer Pratt.
Thank you, Jackie. It's a pleasure to be here this evening with everyone.
And she'll just be talking general questions. And I want to remind you guys, there's a number on your screen, 888-88-LEGAL. We want to hear from you guys. The consultation is free. The call is free. Give us a call with any of your questions. If you may have a case, we'd like to help you.
That's right, Jackie. And today's show is super exciting. I'm really, really excited. We've been waiting for this moment. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen. We have two excellent attorneys that I highly respect. And they're going to be talking about something that is an unfortunate repercussion, consequence of this pandemic. It's nothing new. It's not something that hasn't happened before. But we've seen these cases, unfortunately, go up, skyrocket right now, and those are domestic violence cases. And the reason we have Attorney Silver and Attorney Haber here today is because Attorney Haber practices criminal law and Attorney Silver practices family law. And what we'd like today to discuss is that intersection between family cases and domestic violence cases. So, with that being said, I'm going to start off with Attorney Haber. Attorney Haber, you've been handling criminal cases for a very long time. Talk to us a little bit about what is a domestic violence case. For example, is it a domestic violence if I just turn around right here and hit Jackie? Or what are the problems? What makes one case a domestic violence versus just regular violence?
Well, thank you very much for the question. The distinction between domestic and regular cases is the domestic component. So a battery, for example, is a non-consensual touching by one person to another. So and that could be with hands, it could be with instrumentalities, it could even be with spit, quite frankly. Wow. If I spit on you, that's technically a battery. If you and I happen to live together, then it's a domestic violence battery. So the same would occur whether we were talking about a slap or a punch or whether a weapon were involved. And it doesn't have to actually be contact. You could have an assault, which is a threat. It's a credible threat. There are many ways that you could have an act of domestic violence. But the key to being domestic is that there's some interrelation between the parties that makes it domestic as opposed to just a random act, say, between two people who didn't know each other. For example, perhaps an incident of road rage or maybe an argument at a bar or at a school or at a sporting event or something like that.
Attorney Haber, do they have to live together? In other words, if I am at my mom's house, I don't live there, and we get into an altercation, is that considered domestic violence?
Yes, it would be considered domestic violence. There's a connection between the parties. So, and again, what is domestic violence or is not? Some of these things are very clear cut, right? So if you and I are married, or if we're boyfriend and girlfriend, or if we're living in the same house and we have a violent incident, it's clearly domestic. There are arguments to be made in other circumstances, but I think that the overarching issue is going to be whether or not there is some interpersonal connection between the parties that would elevate it. And the reason, frankly, that domestic violence is so important is because of that relationship, right? That's why we created this special category of domestic violence. So just, I know maybe I'm running on a little, but let me just throw this in there because it's interesting. What makes domestic violence cases unique is that same battery that might occur between, let's say, Mr. Silver and I, if we randomly came across each other in a parking lot and got into an altercation, would be ratcheted up if Mr. Silver and I were domestic partners or roommates that had the same type of squabble. And the reason is because if we were just random people that met in a random circumstance, we might not have that same potential for future violence or escalation of violence because of the nature of the relationship that we have with one another. So that's really the distinction.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Attorney Haber. A lot of very informative information. As you can see, there are very many fine lines. So there's a number on your screen and we want you to call it. We want to answer your questions. The number is 88-LEGAL. Give us a call. The consultation is free once again, and we're ready to hear from you.
And Attorney Silver, talk to us a little bit about how domestic violence plays a role in family cases. For example, pending divorce, or even people that have children together, and they're currently in a family court case. How does that affect the family case?
Well, certainly what we're seeing with COVID is that domestic violence situations can arise when families are having problems with finances, problems with time sharing, problems with the child in school, and there's all sorts of issues that are basically just escalating emotions. But a domestic violence injunction can basically limit one parent's access to a child, can result in one parent being excluded or basically evicted from, or constructively evicted from the place they were residing with that person. And there are some major consequences that will be apparent from a domestic violence situation in a marital and family case.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Attorney Silver. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we're ready to answer your questions. We have attorneys ready to answer your questions from all over the country. Give us a call. The number is 888-88-LEGAL. We want to hear from you, and we want to help.
We're going to be going to our first commercial break, but when we come back, I want to discuss with the panel the difference between a civil injunction for domestic violence versus an actual criminal case. I know that at our law firm, Attorney Silver handles some of those civil domestic violence injunctions, and I'd love to speak to these attorneys and see what the differences are between a criminal one and also a civil one. Keep in mind that at our office, we handle criminal matters, family matters. We are litigators, and the numbers on the screen, ladies and gentlemen, 888-88-LEGAL. The first consultation is free. You have absolutely nothing to lose. If you hire us, you're going to be paired up with one of these super experienced attorneys that have years of experience, that know what they're doing, that know the different nuances in your case, that specifically handle your kind of cases. And it's the type of attorney you want in the courtroom. It's the type of attorney you want defending you. These are serious matters, serious allegations that are being brought before yourself or someone you love. Give us a call, 888-88-LEGAL. The first consultation is free. We'll be right back after the break.
I know you're home right now asking yourself, how? How will I pay my rent, my mortgage, my bills, my credit card debt? I'm attorney Alexis Garcia with PraDa Law. I've personally helped people with financial problems over the last 10 years. I understand what you are going through. We saw people lose it all in the 2008 financial crisis. You don't have to lose it all. The consultation is free. Call us now. I will help protect what you have built. You have nothing to lose by calling us. Call us now. These are trying times. This deadly virus is affecting our health, economy, jobs, our small business owners. Bankruptcy protection may be able to save assets and immediately stop your creditors from harassing you. Small business owners, employees of business of any size, we know you need help. Call us now. We will help you get back on your feet. Don't wait until it's too late. This is the time to call.
Sé que estás en la casa ahora mismo preguntándote, ¿cómo? ¿Cómo voy a pagar la hipoteca, la renta, los biles, las tarjetas de crédito? Soy la abogada Jennifer Pratt con PraDa Law. Yo personalmente he ayudado a las personas con problemas financieros durante los últimos 10 años. Yo entiendo por lo que estás pasando. Vimos cómo la gente lo perdió todo durante la crisis financiera del 2008. No tienes que perderlo todo. Llama ahora. La consulta es gratis. Te ayudaremos a proteger todo lo que has construido durante todos estos años. Sabemos que estos son tiempos difíciles. Este virus mortal está amenazando nuestra salud, nuestra economía, nuestros empleos y a los propietarios de nuestras pequeñas empresas. La consulta es gratis. Llame ahora. Te ayudaremos a recuperarte. No esperes hasta que sea demasiado tarde. Llame ya.
Hello and welcome back to PraDa Law Live. Once again, I'm Jackie Mendez. I'm your host for today's show. We're talking family law. We're talking criminal law. We have an amazing guest, Mike Haber, who's talking criminal law, and of course, our partners, Jennifer Pratt and Dan Silver. So we want to take it away. Well, let's give it to Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And before the break, we were talking about the differences between domestic violence and the cases that are skyrocketing right now, unfortunately, due to COVID. You know, at this point, it's been months that a lot of us have been cooped up in the house. And, you know, it's one or the other. Either you found a newfound love for that person you're living with, or you may not be getting along. And if that's the case, if you've been accused of whether it's domestic violence or you're currently facing a domestic violence case, whether it's a civil matter or criminal matter, give us a call. The number's on the screen. First consultation is free, 888-888-LEGAL. And I want to address with Attorney Haber, during the break, we mentioned the difference between talking about the difference between a criminal and a civil domestic violence. But Attorney Haber, you were explaining to me that sometimes they follow each other. Break that down so that folks can understand what that means.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So you have a domestic violence situation that occurs. There's a couple of different ways that it can be handled. I like to tell people that once you let the cat out of the bag, and in this case I mean call the police, whether you do it or whether a neighbor does it or whether some third party does it, however the police ultimately get involved, the cat's out of the bag and it ain't getting back in the bag. That's a criminal issue. If you don't call the cops, there's always the potential for a civil issue. So there's two different things that we're dealing with here. One is a crime. That is, the police make a determination that the criminal code has been violated, somebody committed an offense, and somebody goes to jail. That triggers an entire protocol and involves the criminal justice system and the parties in a proceeding that they do not control. The criminal court is a plaintiff, the state of Florida, not the complaining witness. And the prosecutor and the complaining witness may very well be at odds. So, for example, again, going back to the issue, the analogy of Dan and I, the example, if we have that argument and the police come to the Walmart parking lot because somebody called it in, and the police decide that they're going to arrest me, Dan may say, you know what, I don't really care about any of this. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to go to court. I don't want to have to be hassled with it. But the prosecutor may turn around and subpoena him anyhow because it's not his call. Now, they can listen to him, they can respect him, but they don't have to. He's just a witness. So that's the criminal end. But on the civil end, if there's no cops involved, then one party can simply go to the courthouse and swear out an affidavit and say, I'm in fear. And for a variety of different reasons, they can request protection from the court. This is civil protection, not criminal protection. So they're totally separate. But what we find a lot of times is that they wind up overlapping with one another. So there's a criminal case, somebody gets arrested, and the victim in that case then becomes the petitioner or the plaintiff in a civil lawsuit, a domestic violence injunction. And that's where Dan would come in, because Dan would probably be representing somebody, Mr. Silver would probably be representing somebody on the civil end who was complaining that they were injured and need protection, or they're in fear and they need protection from the courts, as opposed to the police, or in conjunction with the police, both at the same time.
Well, Mike, very, very informative. Thank you so much. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching, there's a number on your screen, 888-88-LEGAL. We want to hear from you. We want to know if you have a criminal case. We're willing to help. We're ready to help. We have very experienced attorneys ready to listen.
That's right. Attorney Silver, you mentioned that there's also different types of domestic violence. It's not necessarily just what many of us maybe have seen on the TV or things like that, just physical violence. There's also other kinds of domestic violence?
There are different types of civil injunctions. You have what we've been talking about, your domestic violence injunction. Sometimes something may not rise to the level of domestic violence, but it would be stalking. So if you have someone who's committing many acts of harassment, that could rise to the level of stalking. You also have, for parties who are not in a domestic type situation, we talked about, you know, what if Haber and I got in an argument in a Walmart parking lot? Well, if it happened one time, it wouldn't be an injunction. However, if it repeated itself and I kept following Haber and there were repeat instances of domestic violence, then you would have a repeat violence, violence of repeat violence injunction, and also you've got sexual violence injunctions. So there are many different types of civil injunctions that someone can apply to relief for. But what we're kind of focusing on today is the interplay between what happens when someone is arrested in a familial context, when there's a minor child involved, and that's something we're going to have to talk about, I think, when we get to another break.
That's right. Well, before we cut to that break, we want to remind you that you can call. The consultation is free. The call is free. The number's on the screen as well, 888-88-LEGAL. We're ready to take your questions and hear your concerns.
That's right. And we're going to be taking a commercial break in just a few seconds here. But give us a call if you're someone that's facing, whether it's a criminal matter, a civil matter, or if you're a victim of domestic violence. I'm speaking to you right now. I know a lot of individuals are scared. They're scared to go to the police, to raise these issues. You have a right to protect yourself. And when we get back from the break, I want to talk about, once you file this injunction on the civil courthouse, what happens? What kind of protections can the court give you? We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Listen to us. We'll be right back.
I know you're home right now asking yourself, how? How will I pay my rent, my mortgage, my bills, my credit card debt? I'm attorney Alexis Garcia with PraDa Law. I've personally helped people with financial problems over the last 10 years. I understand what you are going through. We saw people lose it all in the 2008 financial crisis. You don't have to lose it all. The consultation is free. Call us now. I will help protect what you have built. You have nothing to lose by calling us. Call us now. These are trying times. This deadly virus is affecting our health, economy, jobs, our small business owners. Bankruptcy protection may be able to save assets and immediately stop your creditors from harassing you. Small business owners, employees of business of any size. We know you need help. Call us now. We will help you get back on your feet. Don't wait until it's too late. This is the time to call.
Sé que estás en la casa ahora mismo preguntándote, ¿cómo voy a pagar la hipoteca, la renta, los biles, las tarjetas de crédito? Soy la abogada Jennifer Pratt con PraDa Law. Yo personalmente he ayudado a las personas con problemas financieros durante los últimos 10 años. Yo entiendo por lo que estás pasando. Vimos cómo la gente lo perdió todo durante la crisis financiera del 2008. No tienes que perderlo todo. Llama ahora. La consulta es gratis. Te ayudaremos a proteger todo lo que has construido durante todos estos años. Sabemos que estos son tiempos difíciles. Este virus mortal está amenazando nuestra salud, nuestra economía, nuestros empleos y a los propietarios de nuestras pequeñas empresas. La consulta es gratis. Llame ahora. Te ayudaremos a recuperarte. No esperes hasta que sea demasiado tarde. Llame ya.
Welcome back to PraDa Law Live. Once again, I'm Jackie Mendez, hosting today's show. And we have a great show. We've been talking about some very important issues, some family issues, criminal issues. We have our special guest, Mike Haber, today, who is joining us. And of course, our partners, Jennifer and Daniel. So we want to get right into it. But before we do, there's a number on your screen, 888-88-LEGAL. Give us a call. That consultation is free. So is the call. And we're ready to hear from you.
That's right, Jackie. Thank you so much. And we've been talking about the intersection between family law, criminal law, and specifically about domestic violence. We mentioned before, with COVID-19, a lot of us quarantine at home. Unfortunately, these cases have skyrocketed. And if you are accused or if you are a victim, it doesn't matter which side of the token you are, you need great representation, particularly in these civil matters. There will not be a public defender or any attorney there to hold your hand during the process. You need representation. Do not try to take these cases on by yourself. There's explicit evidence that needs to be presented. These are high standards of law that, you need an experienced attorney like Mr. Silver. Mr. Silver, before the break, we were talking about the interaction between domestic violence, and you mentioned something about weaponizing domestic violence. Talk to me a little bit about that. What does that mean?
Thanks, Jennifer. Sure will. So if we have a couple that are living together and one spouse files a domestic violence injunction and they have a child together, well, the spouse that's on the receiving side of that domestic violence injunction, who is going to receive a temporary injunction, is going to be enjoined basically the other spouse is going to have exclusive use and possession of the home. The other spouse is going to have to find somewhere else to go. And the complaining spouse is going to have a temporary order of 100% time sharing with the minor child, and the other spouse may not be able to see the minor child. And that temporary injunction hearing may take 6 to 8 weeks. So that during that time, you're out of your house, you're not seeing your child, and the domestic violence injunction has been weaponized, and it could be then capitalized on in a family law filing.
Okay, break this down. What does enjoined mean for those people that are watching us? What does that mean? What do you mean I'm going to get enjoined out of my house?
It means you can't be in your house anymore. You and your spouse are residing in the same residence. There's a temporary injunction enjoining or prohibiting one spouse from being there. So that person who has that temporary injunction against them, they are out of the house. It doesn't matter where they're going to go, but they can't be there.
Exactly. Wow. Well, a lot of information, ladies and gentlemen, and if you are one of these people who have one of these cases, who have those family issues, once again, COVID-19 has kind of built up a lot of tension. There's a number on your screen. It's 888-88-LEGAL. We want to help you. We want to represent you, and we want to inform you.
That's right, Attorney Silver, and you mentioned something also about the children. So if I'm enjoined, if I'm the one that's, evicted, so to speak, kicked out of my house, I'm the one accused of committing the domestic violence, are you saying now I may not be able to see my children?
That is correct. By default, they may enter a temporary injunction basically prohibiting the violating or the spouse that is having the injunction entered against them, not only from seeing the child, but also from going to the house. So yes, they will be completely enjoined from their house and seeing the child, and they may have to apply to family court and file a family court filing in order to get time sharing or some sort of time with the child.
That was going to be my question. What would you file? If I come to your office right now and I said, I just got kicked out of my house per court order, I want to see my children, I miss them, I want to be with them, they have health conditions, the other parent has never helped to raise them, they don't know, they don't have a clue, especially if they're little babies, or it doesn't matter, it's your children. What would you file for me? What would you file for that?
And how about when one spouse is involved or is enjoined, who's going to pay the rent on the marital residence? Who's going to, pay the bills? I mean, these are all issues that are dealt with in family court and not in domestic violence court. In domestic violence court, they are permitted to order child support, but as far as, the marital expenses and the marital estate, equitable distribution issues, these aren't for the domestic violence court. This is for family court. So if someone has been enjoined in a domestic violence situation, they may want to file a petition for divorce, and then they end up in unified family court, because the case law is clear that a family court circuit judge is in a much better position to make determinations as to the child's best interest versus a domestic violence judge, which is more focused solely on the domestic violence issues. And one thing that is very prevalent is that if there's a domestic violence situation, there may be an arrest. And if someone is arrested and convicted of a crime involving domestic violence, that may create a presumption in the family case where they may not be able to have shared parental responsibility because it would be detrimental to the child. And that's where an attorney like Haber is really going to come in to save the day, to make sure you're not criminally convicted.
Absolutely. And I know, I can't believe it, the show is almost over, but Attorney Haber, before we go, I'd love to hear if you could provide our audience with a tip or two regarding if they've been arrested or accused of domestic violence. What are some maybe do's and don'ts that you would, recommend this person immediately, besides calling our office, right, and hiring an attorney? What are some do's and don'ts that you've seen throughout your years of experience handling these kind of cases?
So I'm going to give you a generic piece of advice that will apply to DV, but any arrest. I call it up X2, meaning up times 2. Shut up and lawyer up. Those are the two things you should always do. And that's really what I'm saying is invoke your Fifth Amendment and your Sixth Amendment privileges. You have a right to remain silent. You cannot be compelled to become a witness against yourself. Anything you say to the cops can and will be used against you. And you have a right to have counsel present. So if you invoke, you up X2, shut up and lawyer up, that's the best case scenario for your lawyer. There's always a time to tell your story, and it's almost never to the police. Anything that you say or can say, your lawyer can say better and smarter and in a better environment, like a courtroom. So that's the generic advice, and I think it applies across the board. And just to touch on what Dan said before about weaponizing, this happens all the time. It is a mandatory, one of the differences, again, between domestic violence and regular violence, it is a mandatory condition of bond that the stay-away order be entered by the judge. You cannot be released from jail without being told you cannot have any contact.
Wow. Mike Haber said it best. Shut up and lawyer up. Give us a call, 888-88-LEGAL. We want to hear from you.
That's right. I want to thank everybody for participating today. Remember, the numbers on the screen. The first consultation is free. Any family issue, criminal matters, domestic violence, we are here. Again, 888-888-LEGAL. 888-88-LEGAL. First consultation is free. Give us a call. You have absolutely nothing to lose. I want to thank our panel today. Excellent information. We can't wait to see you next time. I'm Jennifer Pratt, signing off. Thank you.